Hey guys, how are you? Dr. Nathan Thompson here with the Wellness Way Yorkville. Happy Monday evening. Tonight is a question and answer. So if you got a question, I will do my best to answer your question as best as I can. So if you are watching right now, guys, let me know where you're watching from and make sure that you say hello. I know that we already have some questions that are coming in. So I'll do my best to keep up with all of you as much as possible. I know that right now we're streaming to Facebook at Dr. Nathan Thompson, Facebook on the Wellness Way Yorkville, also on YouTube at Dr. Nathan Thompson, Rumble at Dr. Nathan Thompson, and then also streaming through my phone on the wonderful people on Instagram. Right now, they don't have streaming software. So I am going with multiple cameras right now. So today, November 6th, 2023. By the way, I have to give a shout out. Today is my wife Barbara's birthday, so it's her birthday. I won't let you know how old she is, but it's her birthday today. So that's why I went a little bit earlier so that we can go out as a family and enjoy a nice dinner for birthday. So when you get to be my age, birthdays just aren't as important as they used to be. So guys, question and answer for tonight. Before while we wait for people to say hello and for questions to come in, just a couple of things, guys, is our next inflammation talk in person in Chicago. People reach out to me all the time, like, what do I need to do? Where do I need to start from? And if you're from the Chicagoland area, guys, inflammation is the most important thing to address first. There's lots of other things that you have to address, but inflammation, you will not get better if you are inflamed. And I've had multiple consults today of people saying they have adrenal fatigue or type 2 diabetes and hormone issues and things like that. And the thing that never ever was addressed, and this is literally suffering for years, and even going to natural doctors, the thing that was never ever addressed was inflammation first and foremost. So inflammation is the spark that leads to every single disease out there. And so that's why if you are not addressing inflammation, you cannot address proper weight loss. You cannot address cancer. You cannot address hormone issues, even related to infertility, thyroid issues, chronic joint pain, type 2 diabetes, autoimmune conditions, and then also even issues with hormone balance. Guys, you know what the best hormone balancer is out there? Make sure you write this down. It's the body. The body knows how to balance hormones. Not a doctor, not a natural doctor. The body knows how to balance hormones. And that's why the best thing to do with addressing hormones is to address inflammation first and foremost. And guys, if you are within the continuous 48 states and you want to work with our office directly, then go register for the inflammation webinar. You can go, if you're watching on Facebook or on Instagram, even on YouTube, even on Rumble, you can go to the top page. You'll see our link tree there. The link tree, guys, I say go to my link tree, and people are like, what on earth is that? Link tree is just basically, it's a landing page that's got multiple links on it because a lot of social media platforms only let you have one link on it. And so this is my one link, and then it takes you to a bunch of links. So if you go to Linktree, you'll be able to see to work with me remotely and then watch the webinar. At the end of the webinar, you'll have an opportunity to schedule a discovery call with me one-on-one. And in fact, I think we have 5 of them scheduled for this week. And so my time is limited in regards to that. So at some point we might have to shut it down. So I would hurry and do that if you are kind of on the fence. So go watch that webinar. You'll have the ability to be able to register for it, watch it right now, or watch it on Tuesday evening at 6 Central Standard Time, or on Saturday morning Central Standard Time at 9 o'clock a.m. Now, here's something that will be for all of you guys with the, I don't know, 100,000 followers that I have. I used to have 150,000 on TikTok, and then I got banned for speaking actually truth. It wasn't anything. It was actually the experts even admitted it. But one of the things that we're going to be doing to help you out on your health journey is coming up on December 1st. So December 1st, 2023. And we're going to be releasing something every single day leading up to Christmas Eve. And it's called 5 Minutes of Fire. Now, what is 5 Minutes of Fire? It is a daily workout that's going to take 5 minutes every single day leading up to the 23rd of December. And so it's going to be different modalities that we're going to be using. There's going to be 10 different movements. No equipment needed unless you're a little bit more advanced, then you might need a jump rope. But this is something that you can do from your house. So this is not something that you need a gym membership, although you can do it at a gym. And it's going to be really cool because there's going to be movements in there that are going to make you better at everyday life that you probably have never heard of. And these are actually some of the movements that I do at some capacity every single week. So 5 minutes of fire, guys. We will be releasing that soon. We'll give you enough time to be able to get the downloads for it and the workout program. We'll release a new post every single day that will show the workout. But then there also will be a video as well that will demonstrate. It's me demonstrating the intermediate, or the beginner, intermediate, advanced movements. So that way you can actually choose a track that will work best for you, that will keep you safe, but also be able to give you the intended stimulus of that workout. So that's going to be really, really awesome. That will be free for everyone. However, we're going to be doing some giveaways. And so if you have liked our page, if you've followed us for a while, then one of the cool things we're going to be doing is we're going to be giving away about $300 of stuff on Christmas Eve. And what do you need to do in order to get to qualify for that is you're going to go to our t-shirt store, and you're going to purchase a t-shirt, and then you'll take a picture of you wearing the t-shirt, and that will enter you into the drawing that we're going to have. And so I have a picture up here. If you're watching on Facebook, YouTube, you will actually see some of the t-shirts that we have. They're actually pretty cool t-shirts. One of them is the famous Mandate Burpee t-shirt. Over 350, I think, sold. We also have another burpee t-shirt that says 1 star for burpees, would not recommend. And then there's another t-shirt that says nobody cares, just work harder. All right. One of my staff actually said, that sounds kind of mean. And I'm like, well, if you know me, sometimes I'm not the nicest person. I can be very, very direct. So nobody cares, work harder. And that's actually my mantra, is nobody cares about the struggles I'm going through. Just keep working. So we'll be able to, if you get one of those t-shirts, basically all you do is you order it and it will be shipped directly to your house. So it'll be shipped directly to you. So I think that's going to be a really, really fun time. And as always, I appreciate the support. This will probably go towards our kids' college fund. So guys, let's get to question and answer. That's going to be starting December 1st. So make sure, if you don't follow our page, make sure you follow our page for more information. And we'll be dropping the links and the resources for you coming up probably within the next week to week and a half. So question and answer, guys. I'll be bouncing back and forth trying to answer the question as much or as best as possible. So let's go over to YouTube. Let's see if hopefully I haven't skipped over a lot of things. Here's the first one from Dennis from YouTube. What's your opinion of British osteopaths? They practice a drug-free approach to health that includes manual therapy and functional. Sometimes I can't read this because the camera is in the way. Functional chemistry. I don't have an opinion, neither good nor bad, regarding British osteopaths. I actually love osteopaths if they are the old school. Osteopaths today are just basically medical doctors who happen to get a degree or to get their doctorate in osteopathy. And so now today, especially in the United States, you can't really tell a difference between a medical doctor and an osteopath. Osteopaths do have a little bit of training in what's known as long lever manipulation. But a lot of them just never, they may take a course in it, but they never utilize it and they never use it. And full disclosure, even some of the things that we do in our office addressing the physical stressors are actually osteopathic type maneuvers. Osteopaths were wonderful until about the 1930s and 1940s. And then they basically joined the medical movement, got into bed with them, so to speak, and they really lost their identity. So, and there's actually wonderful, wonderful research out there that is very hard to find with osteopathic research about the spine and its connection neurologically to organ systems. And that's a lot of times that people don't make the connection. that if you've ever noticed, for example, you can have referred pain in the spine that's actually coming from the organ. And they have done research and shown that the um, sympathetic or parasympathetic control that comes from the spine through the neurology, how the spine actually affects organ function and how organ function even affects the spine. And it's really, really cool. A lot of the research was done by osteopaths, but a lot of that research has been lost, or it was burned, or it was hidden. And a lot of that research was done in the 1930s and 1940s. And so if you can find an osteopath in Britain, I know that I know personally a couple of chiropractors that are in Great Britain. So reach out to me and I can maybe point you in the right direction. Okay. All right, so here's the next question, and then I'll jump back to Instagram because I know I'm probably falling way behind over on that platform. Any recommendations for adult ADHD supplements? Okay, so here's the thing: is anytime anyone asks a supplement recommendation, I'm not trying to pick on you at all, but is that what we're saying? And I talk about this in the inflammation talk is that people like have gotten to the point where like, yeah, I know that like taking Ritalin or Vyvanse or taking Strattera and all of these stimulant medications, I don't like it. I don't like how it makes me feel. I don't like what it does. I don't like that. And so they realize that that drug approach is not the best approach, but they still want a drug approach. They just want something more natural like a supplement. Okay. And so they're like, well, then what supplements am I supposed to take for ADHD? And before you would even do anything in regards to supplements for ADHD, the first thing that I would do is first test some things. So with a person with ADHD, the first thing that I would probably test is I test for food allergies, both IgG and IgE. And the reason why is because a histamine response excites the brain. Okay. I mean, you talk about you give a person sugar and their brain gets all excited. Histamines excite the brain, which is why you give a antihistamine. That's why you get drowsy because of it, because it's blocking histamine receptors even in the brain and even in the target tissue. So get a food allergy test and then figure out why, if someone has a lot of food allergies, why in fact they have it. They may also have a problem breaking down histamines, and that can be related to poor nutrition, but then also having an MTHFR gene mutation. It can also be related to, doing a neurotransmitter test can help. Sometimes doing a stool test can help. And so the first thing that I would say is just make sure, guys, that you're getting tested first, that you're working with a Wellness Way doctor who knows what on earth, to do it. And it takes me back to a young boy who was only, 8 years of age, who was just bouncing off the walls with ADHD. And, his brain, his mom just said it just said his brain always feels like it's on fire. And I never forget, we were working with him for about 2 or 3 months and had a follow-up consult with him. And the mom came in and she was in tears. I was like, well, what are you upset about? She says, I'm just really happy because for the first time, my son told me that he loved me. And he had never, ever done that. He'd just been so wired and just so jittery, so angry, and just so emotional. And so this is why the immune system can affect the brain. And so that's why with ADD and ADHD, just as an FYI, there's no blood test that can confirm that diagnosis. So really ADD, ADHD is just describing the symptoms, but they still don't know what is actually causing it. So you want to go a little bit deeper by making sure that you're doing the right testing. So I see awesome people from from Massachusetts, from Northwest Arkansas, recent transplant from the wonderful town of Naperville, Illinois. Happy birthday, Mrs. Dr. T. Thank you very much, Shelly. I appreciate it. Listening from Ohio. That is awesome. From North Carolina, Kim, how are you? It's good to see you. Excited for 5 Minutes of Fire to come back. Yes, we did that about 1.5 years ago within the Wellness Way group. So yeah, awesome. Let's go over to Instagram, guys. And if you're watching, let me see if I can catch up, and then I'll let you guys know if you're watching on other platforms what the question is, because you probably won't be able to. be able to see it. So let's see if I can catch up on Instagram, because we got a lot of people that are watching over there. So, and forgive me if I skip over your question. How does coffee affect the gut? Couple of ways. If it's not an organic coffee, coffee can have mold mycotoxins, and if there is mold in the coffee, that can really set off the gastrointestinal system. And so you can have some things with diarrhea and inflammation, things like that, especially if there's mold, mycotoxins that are in it. The other thing too is that high caffeine is going to stimulate the adrenals, and so it can cause a little bit of diarrhea. Especially people can even have an allergy to the protein in coffee. So that it can actually take place. It's a real thing. But a lot of times too, coffee will stimulate the bowels as well. And so if you tend to already have some bowel issues, sometimes having coffee will cause it to actually get worse. So thank you very much for the question. I'm not even going to try to pronounce the name. I'm going to butcher it. So we'll just say Pasiol. I have tested for saliva cortisol and got the morning cortisol very low in the afternoon, inside the range. Why could this be? So if your morning cortisol is very, very low, the first thing that I would see is look at the whole picture of your cortisol. And we're talking about cortisol and rhythm. Why would it be low in the morning? Sometimes it might be very low in the morning because your whole circadian rhythm might have shifted over by a couple of hours because you're just not going to bed in time. So when they're testing your morning cortisol, you usually are testing it at 5, 6 o'clock in the morning. That's when it should be elevating, continue to elevate at 10, 11 in the morning, and then start to taper off. So if it's low in the morning, check it where it's at late morning, and then check where it's at in the later afternoon and see where it's at night. And so for a lot of people, it can be shifted over 2 to 3 hours, which is why when you should be going to bed at 10, you're still feel a little bit wired. And then when you're waking up, at 6 o'clock in the morning, it's your cortisol awakening response wasn't going to happen for another 2 hours after that. And that's why one of the things that can help with your circadian rhythm is actually ashwagandha. So it can work really well. Now, if someone has low cortisol clear across the board, then the first thing that I would say is what's affecting the immune system. There's some kind of issue with toxicity or infection that's going on. Because think about when you have the flu. If you have the flu, your cortisol is very low. You're not wanting to get out of bed. Low cortisol equals high inflammation. So anybody who's like, I have absolutely no energy, then think of something that the immune system is responding to, whether that's a bacteria, virus, a toxin, like a mycotoxin, mold mycotoxin. And just look at that first and foremost. And so when people say I have no energy, yet they're seemingly doing everything perfect, then something is going to be affecting the immune system. So thank you very much for that question. Watching from Dearborn Heights, Michigan. Thank you very much for joining us from Michigan. Sudden drop in heart rate. If there is a sudden drop in heart rate, then I would say something's obviously affecting the adrenal glands, or there's something that's affecting the vagus nerve. So, and that's why when people say, "Oh, my adrenals are tanked," I would say there's something affecting the immune system big time. Okay, so what could be affecting the immune system? Heart rate. Think of what increases the heart rate, and that's your catecholamines, like adrenaline. And so it's usually something as there's something very inflammatory in through the body, and the adrenal glands, boom, they down regulate, which is why people sudden rate drop in heart rate, or they get up from a seated position and they get really dizzy, is why. And then doctors do $10,000 worth of testing and still don't give you any kind of answer. Okay. So watching from Ireland, that is awesome. There is a Wellness Way doctor, Marie, in Galway, Ireland, just as an FYI. Her name is Dr. Page. Had MRIs, 2 neurologists, 3 times, no answers. Internal vibrations, fatigue, exercise intolerance. Go visit Dr. Page in Galway, Ireland. Please do that, because she can help you with that. She can help you get the test that you need. But if you are having internal vibrations, fatigue, exercise intolerance, there's something that is affecting the immune system. There's no doubt about it. So how many of you who you exercise and you feel absolutely crushed, especially if you do a high intensity for 3 to 4 days, you do not have the cortisol, you don't have the adrenaline to sustain you. And so that's why if people are just getting crushed by exercise, there's a lot of nuance with this, but it's like, then you probably should stop exercising. That is not your number one priority. And I have taken people off of exercise for 3 to 4 months before I would let them even go back because they need to recover. Well, Dr. Nate, isn't exercise good? Yes, exercise is actually wonderful, but exercise can be counterproductive at some time. So most of America, I'm trying to get them to exercise more, but in some cases, we're trying to get some people to exercise a little bit less. Okay. All right. So let's go back to Facebook. And let's see, apologize if, let's see. So Olivia, recently diagnosed with osteoporosis at 58, scared to take the meds. Is there anything you do that might help me? Okay. So with osteoporosis, they probably want you to put you on, basically it's a medication that increases osteoblastic activity and decreases osteoclastic activity. Those are big words, and basically the mechanism how they're working is they're preventing bone remodeling and reabsorption. So basically what happens is the cells in the bone just keep making more bone, but those osteoclasts that are reabsorbing bone are just as important as well, because your body, the bones become stronger according to how you are stressing them. And so that's why the bones are under constant remodeling. And so it's almost like with the drugs, what they're doing is they're it's almost like building a wall without any structure to it. Just because you have more wood on the wall doesn't necessarily mean that it's structurally sound. And this is what a lot of women are going through, especially postmenopausal. Now, you'll have a higher incidence of osteoporosis, especially if you hit menopause early. Um, the other thing is too, is you'll see that osteoporosis will be a lot more prevalent in thin women. I want you to think about it, because estradiol is what helps to protect the bone. And if you do carry a little bit more body fat, it will actually be more protective of your bone. So if you are 58 and you have been diagnosed with osteoporosis, then what I would do is start doing something right away. Okay. Now, here's what I would probably do is that number one, do you need more calcium? The answer is probably not. What you do is you probably need better calcium absorption. So make sure that you are absorbing your minerals, which is why you need stomach acid. Number two, check what your body weight is. And if you're carrying low body fat, then put on some body fat, because that body fat, and in fact, after osteoporosis or after menopause, you do need to carry a certain level of body fat in order to maintain certain hormone levels. So too low a body fat can create a problem. The other thing that I would do too is maybe invest in vibration therapy. Get a vibe plate. So whole body vibration can be a wonderful benefit. And then get on an exercise program that's just not walking. An exercise program should actually not be walking. It should be things that are stressing the bones. And where you're seeing the highest level of osteoporosis or fractures, you're going to see it in the hips. You're going to see it in the spine, usually right around T12, L1 area. And that's called a compression fracture. And then you also will see it in the neck of the humerus of the shoulder. Usually that happens through some kind of fall on an outstretched arm. So think of hip, spine, and shoulders. So how should you be stressing it? You should be stressing it by doing things like deadlifting, weighted back squat, weighted presses. And that's why doing heavy weightlifting, at 58 years of age, absolutely, because there's a principle inside the body called the SAID principle, specific adaptation to imposed demands, meaning the body always adapts to the demands that you place on it. And so if you place a demand on it, then the body reacts by adapting and getting stronger. If you do not place a stress on it, then it will adapt by getting weaker. It only adapts to the stress that you place on it. Meaning this, if you sit all day, then the body will adapt to sitting for 6, 7, 8 hours every single day. What happens? Hamstrings get tight, the hip flexors starting to weaken and to shorten, the lower back starts to round up, you start hunching over, everything starts to get tight, your shoulders flexibility begins to get worse. And so that's why you have to do things in order to counteract your daily activity. So you got to get on a weightlifting program. So check your stomach acid, check your body fat percentage, vibration, doing like a vibe plate, and then also doing heavy weightlifting. And then obviously you need to, if you don't know how to do it, get in touch with someone or a trainer who knows how to teach you to do it. When I previously owned a gym, I mean, we would spend like, many minutes, several times a week doing what would be called squat therapy, teaching people how to squat correctly. Because if you can't do an air squat, then you also can't do a loaded squat. So very, very important just to start working on those things. And we'll actually be doing some air squats during the 5 minutes of fire. So I think that will be good. I hope that hopefully you join us for that. So, all right. So let's go to Facebook. We'll answer another one of those questions in Facebook. Why would you have just low ACT but not a change in cortisol and a low red? I'm trying to think. Sorry, I can't see this. Maybe a low red count. Okay. So adrenocorticotropin hormone, why would that be low? And have a low red blood cell count. If you have a low red blood cell count, the first thing that I would say is there can be something that might be affecting the bone marrow. There also may be an issue with B12 that can play an issue with it. But as far as the corticotropin hormone, the stimulating hormone, I would look at cortisol levels first and foremost. And if it's low, I probably would say, well, that's okay if your cortisol levels are normal. But if that's low and cortisol levels are low as well, then I would probably say that there's some kind of down regulation that could be going on, as well. Now, if you see someone who's got their cortisol stimulating hormone that's extremely high for no reason whatsoever, sometimes they can have a pituitary tumor. But if someone's got a pituitary tumor, what I'm really concerned about is some kind of like very high toxic insult that could be going on. Okay, let's go to Instagram. All right, so and forgive me if I have passed over some questions as well. So from Instagram, and guys, if you're watching, make sure that you say hello. Let me know where you're watching from. All right. Watching from Toronto, Canada. That's awesome. All right. This is an interesting question from Instagram. Shell asked the question, episodes of passing out recently and then hives covering parts of the body. What should I get tested? Medical docs are at a loss. Okay, so if you are getting hives, I want you to think of this. It's immune. So hives are an immune system response. And in fact, it's a histamine response. So, and I want you to think of this is everybody wants to go to the skin, but I want you to think of this because we have people who come in with eczema, and doctors look at the skin as the skin being the problem, and it's not the problem. The problem is with the immune system, so it is an inflammatory issue and or there's some kind of deficiency that's taken place. We see this happen all the time. And in fact, a lot of times when you calm down one barrier, you'll also calm down another barrier. That's why when you look at people who eat foods and get an asthma response, or you look at people who will eat foods and they'll break out in hives, or you'll see that they will eat certain things and their eczema will start to flare up. So if you're talking about that you're passing out, it's probably an adrenaline dump. And then number two, if you're getting hives, think of that what could the immune system be exposed to? What testing would you get? I would get IgG, IgE food allergy, and probably get a stool test. Work with the Wellness Way doctor, especially. The reason why they're at a loss is because they don't do any of that testing. So what you don't test, you will not find out. But here's what happens when you have an immune response, and at the barrier, there will be a discharge of certain immune system communicators or messengers that will then travel through the blood and become systemic that can then activate other immune cells at other barriers. And that's why if you eat a food, that's why you can start to develop phlegm or you'll start to develop breathing issues. That's why you'll see a change in the skin because the skin, the lungs, the genitourinary barrier, and the gastrointestinal barrier, they're all barriers, and that's where most of the immune system is sitting at. So go to thewellnessway.com, find a doctor near you, and if you can't find one, reach out to me on Instagram, and we'll do our best in order to help you get the help that you need. So awesome. Let's take another question from Instagram. Hi from Vancouver, Canada. How can you remove calcium deposit? Score is really high to 700. Father has it also. Um, I am wondering what you mean by calcium deposit as possibly having a coronary artery calcium score, like a high coronary artery calcium score. Let me know if that's what you mean. So if you have a high coronary artery calcium score, basically what it means is this, is that you are very inflamed. And just think of this, the arteries aren't the only thing that get inflamed. In fact, when we do x-rays on people, usually we see that inflammation is very systemic. Now, if you're seeing calcification on the spine, then there's something structurally going on. The body tries to stabilize it by calcium, but it has to be inflamed first and foremost in order for there to be calcium deposition. And so you can see calcium deposition on the thyroid if it's been inflamed for a long period of time. You will also see calcium deposition in the arteries if they have been inflamed for a long period of time. And so you can see calcium deposition in the aorta. You can see calcium deposition in the femoral arteries. You can see them in the carotid arteries. And it just means that there has been inflammation for a long period of time. And there's inflammation, fatty infiltration, and finally it calcifies or it starts to basically scar over until you can see it on an x-ray. If you're looking at a coronary artery calcium score, basically what you're looking at is you're looking at the amount of old calcifications taking place. So it had to have been there for a long time in order for there to be old calcification to take place. Now, before it calcifies, usually there's plaquing. Plaquing is actually what you really want to be concerned about more because as it calcifies, it becomes actually more stable. So it's the plaquing that hasn't calcified is the one that is really going to give you more and more problems. And so if there's any kind of coronary artery calcification, then what I would say is first and foremost, figure out why on earth there's so much calcification taking place and figure out what's going on as far as inflammation. So look at things like sedimentation rates, C-reactive protein, homocysteine, which can really, really affect your blood vessels, like nitric oxide production and things like that. So doctors keep pushing me from one specialty to another with no answer. I know it is frustrating. How many of you are frustrated because you have a problem, they can't figure it out, so they send you then to a specialist and then to another specialist and a subspecialist? This is what I say. Yes, maybe it's kind of mean, I don't know, but a specialist is someone who knows more and more about less and less until finally they're experts in nothing. See, the problem with healthcare today is that you keep going to a specialist who only looks at the one thing that is wrong to try to fix just that one thing without trying to find how the whole body is actually attempting to try to adapt to it as well. And so that's why with medicine, you just go to a specialist. And it's kind of like saying this. It's kind of like saying, I have all of these inflammatory things that are going on. I have arthritic issues in my joints. I have inflamed thyroid, lots of gastrointestinal issues. My arteries are inflamed. So, and I also have eczema. So I'm going to go to a dermatologist. I'm going to go to a gastroenterologist. I'm going to go to an endocrinologist, and I'm also going to go to a cardiologist. I'm going to go to all those different doctors, and they're trying to fix that one thing without putting all of the pieces together. This is why people are so frustrated when it comes to healthcare. And so you really, really need to actually put all of the pieces together and look at the big picture and the big idea. This is why I say that you have to look at a 30,000 foot view of what's going on with a person's health and look at how all those organ systems are working together. This is true with whatever condition that you have going on. And even if you have a ton of joint pain, for example, there's a structural issue that's going on. I guarantee there's a chemical issue. Chemically, if you are very inflamed, the structural issues will actually become more inflamed and will actually hurt worse as well. So even things as simple as joint pain, you have to handle a chemical, mental, and physical approach to it, all the way to the most complex things that are happening, like cancer or autoimmunity and things like that. Thank you so much for the question. Next one I'll answer is from Facebook, and then I see about metformin and insulin resistance. So Bobby Bentley asked the question, my hubby has had very low energy since his you-know-what. Okay, so I've done testing on this, and it got me in a lot of trouble, but that's okay. So I would say this: go to YouTube, and you will see that I followed. You'll probably be able to see it easier on Rumble. So if you go to the Rumble platform, rumble.com, and go to the very first video, and then you'll see that I followed up with this person who had the same symptoms after the you-know-what. And so if they have very, very low energy, I'm going to guarantee there's something that's very inflammatory. And I have seen homocysteine levels skyrocket after the you-know-what. And that means that there is a big time problem with methylation and detoxification. Okay. So go back, and that may help give you kind of some of the first things that you need to do when it comes to that. So Instagram is, what do you think about metformin for insulin resistance? Let me give you a story. I don't prescribe medications. I don't have prescriptive rights, but that doesn't change the fact that I wouldn't get metformin even if I did. Here's what's interesting. Go to WebMD, and then type in metformin and look at the reviews, and then get back to me and tell me if that's a good drug to be on. Because it's funny and sad at the same time. Metformin is the first drug that they give to people when they are diabetic, maybe even pre-diabetic. How does metformin work? Metformin works by getting sugar into the cell. But what metformin does, and I'm going to give you a clinical example. This is from today. So I had a 4-week follow-up with a gentleman who has been a type 2 diabetic for about 20 years. It started with metformin. Now he's on 2 more medications. One of them is actually works at the kidneys in order to clear out sugar from the kidneys, to dump sugar from the kidneys from the blood. And despite being on 3 medications for type 2 diabetes and being a diabetic for 20 years, he was at a point where his fasting blood sugars were at about 240, and his A1C was at, I believe, 8.9, way out of control. And this is the proper medical management of type 2 diabetes. So fast forward 4 weeks, and I won't tell you specifically what we did, only because everyone will run out and do it thinking that it's going to work for them, and it may not. But fast forward 4 weeks, his fasting blood sugar is now at 140. So it went from 240 down to 140 in 4 weeks. And this is just by doing some things in relation to diet. This is in relation to herbals, because there are some things that are very, very powerful that don't have the side effects of metformin, aka berberines, gymnema. And then also had him getting a specific amount of movement. And then we'll even take it up a notch here within about 4 or 5 weeks and have him start doing high intensity type of movement and probably some weightlifting. But you can see him after 4 weeks, the amount of swelling that he's lost. He's lost a considerable amount of weight. We're talking about 25 to 30 pounds. And don't tell me, if you are watching it, that that's dangerous. It Because most of the weight that he has lost has not been fat. It's just been water and swelling and inflammation. And so that's why there's nothing that would be more powerful than lifestyle. There's no doubt about it. But the cool thing is he comes to me, he's like, but I had really, really loose stool. And I'm like, it's the metformin. The metformin's doing, you need to talk to your doctor to be able to see if they'll pull you off of that medication. So there is a lot better things to do than metformin for insulin resistance. The first thing, if you have insulin resistance, I will tell you this, is stop your sugars. So please stop your sugars. That's why we do, probably coming up in maybe February, we'll do something like a no sugar type challenge. And this individual, he's still having carbs, but he's restricting the types of carbs that he's having. So if you want better response to insulin, then stop doing the things that is making the body secrete so much insulin, especially. All right. So from Instagram, how can you check your stomach acid? Is apple cider vinegar good to take? Well, one of the ways that you can check your stomach acid is to get a stool test, and that will check and see products of protein breakdown. So if you tend to have a lot of protein in your stool, then you are not breaking down your proteins into amino acids, and you need a lot more stomach acid. How can you also, is apple cider vinegar good? Yeah, it can be a good place to start, although some people need a lot stronger than just apple cider vinegar. So let's see if we can do one more question from Instagram. Thank you guys for joining us. Wow, a lot of people watching right now. Asked about a UTI. So UTI from Cape Town, South Africa, urinary tract infection. If you have frequent urinary tract infections, again, that's a barrier. So the genital urinary tract is a barrier. So if you are getting infections quite a bit, I would actually say is, what's the pH of your urine? Number one. Number two, how's your kidney function? Number three, what's happening in the stool? Because overgrowth within the stool can also increase likelihood of infection. But if you have constant UTIs, I will tell you this: things like cranberry tablets and stuff can help. In fact, if you do have a urinary tract infection, but one thing that helps to prevent it from coming back would be low dose Uber Ursi. And I've had people, I just had a woman today who's had so many urinary tract infections, they will not go away. And she's been on antibiotics so much that we checked her stool and there literally is nothing growing within the stool. And so it's just killed everything off. And that allows for pathogenic bacteria to start to grow when you start pushing out the healthy stuff. What would be a recommendation for a practitioner in Plymouth, Massachusetts? There's no Wellness Way doctors in Massachusetts. I know that we do see some from Massachusetts, so you can reach out to me or go and watch the inflammation webinar and then schedule a consult with me. I know that there's not too many Wellness Way doctors on the East Coast. Although we've had people who have reached out and they say, can I fly in for the week and get what needs to be done and be able to go home? And we're considering doing that and maybe setting up a hotel, things like that. All three kids are showing eczema, I'm going to say. Now, they flare up behind the knees and have spots all over. Will cutting wheat help them? Actually, any food allergy will help. And a lot of kids do have allergies to wheat gluten, but that's just one of them. Usually what they need is they probably need to be on a desiccated liver in order to get vitamin A in the form of retinol. That will help. And then also probably getting a food allergy test and a stool test. If all three kids are showing eczema, then probably what happened is they might have had reactions to, there's something gastrointestinal that's happened, or you may have fed them too early. So you may have started feeding them too early until the gastrointestinal system closed up as well. So cutting out wheat gluten can be a good start, but you probably need to do a full allergy test and at least test the 115 different foods. All right. So, are there any wellness doctors in Ohio? Yes, go to the wellnessway.com, Amy, and you'll be able to find, I believe there's 2 or 3 doctors that are in Ohio. One of them is in Ada, Ohio, and then another one in Ohio. I know that there is at least 2. And so you can check it out and then find them and then be able to reach out for them. All right. What is your opinion on castor oil? I think castor oil is good. It's one of those extra things that you do that I put in line with things like cold plunge, infrared sauna, castor oil packs, coffee enemas. Those things, they have a benefit, but they're not the main thing. And if you are doing far infrared sauna or you're doing cold plunge and you're staying inflamed and haven't changed anything, those things may temporarily feel you better, but they're not going to get you over the hump. And so, yeah, have we had people do them? Absolutely. But you have to make some major changes with your lifestyle first and foremost. All right. So let's go to Instagram again. And if you are watching me, please say hello, guys. What are high inflammatory foods? Well, I would say this: there's really no such thing as high inflammatory foods unless the immune system is reacting to them. Okay. So anybody who says that these are inflammatory foods, the only thing that I would say are kind of inflammatory are going to be sugars, processed sugars, only because of how they spike the blood sugar. And then they can create, especially staying elevated blood sugars can create damage through ages, advanced glycation end stages. So the elevated sugars basically attach to proteins, damage the proteins, and then the immune system has to clean that up. But when people talk about inflammatory foods, kale can be inflammatory for some people. Wheat can be inflammatory for some people. Not all. I don't recommend wheat gluten, but it's not inflammatory. Dairy can be inflammatory for some people. Heck, pork can be inflammatory for people. So, when people say I'm following an anti-inflammatory diet, I'm like, the only way to know if you are truly anti-inflammatory is then do a food allergy test and then also figure out why you may have a lot of different reactions to foods, because then you have to go deeper and figure out why that's happening too, because it's not just happening by accident as well. All right. So, Noel Renee, can you share a day of your eating habits? Noel, this is not going to be very exciting. So, a day of my eating habits, I will tell you this. In the morning, it's usually a bone broth smoothie. So, it's probably about 30 grams of bone broth protein and then mixed with coconut milk, non sweetened. That's usually it. That's all I have. And then for lunch, this is actually just during the week. And then during lunch, it's probably the same. Or I'll have probably another 20 to 30 grams of protein by having like grass fed beef stick. Honestly, people are like, that's all you eat. I'm like, I basically eat only protein up until dinner. And then tonight I'll have for dinner, I'll probably have 9 to 12 ounces of some kind of protein in the form of red meat or chicken, because I hate fish. I will have tons and tons of vegetables. And then sometimes I will have something that's a little bit more high carb, like peas or carrots or like a white potato. Only because if I don't, especially if I worked out, I just eat enough carbs in order to help with my workout for the next day. That is later. I don't eat a lot of desserts. I just have trained myself not to necessarily want them. And that is literally probably my day. That's an average day. And it may look a little bit different on the weekends. People say that's kind of boring. And I'm like, yeah, but I don't need the fancy. I just don't. In fact, I tell people, if you really, really want to get better, keep it so ridiculously simple. The more complex you make it, the more likely you are to actually give up. What test would you recommend to find out what is causing low kidney function? So if you have a low filtration rate, I would say the number one cause of having a low kidney filtration rate is your blood sugars. Why do you think that there's dialysis centers that are popping up all over the place? Look at the incidence of type 2 diabetes. That's the number one thing, is that elevated blood sugars for a long period of time will absolutely destroy the kidneys. So I would check your A1C, insulin, and check your fasting blood glucose. Is kombucha effective for health? From Indonesia. Kombucha is just it's just like a fermented tea. So yeah, there's going to be a little bit of probiotic strands in them, and so yeah, that'd be good as long as you don't have an allergy to brewer's yeast and you don't have an allergy to black tea. Yeah, it can be good too. Just like things like sauerkraut or fermented foods can be wonderful for you too. All right, so if let's go to Facebook. Um, all right, so from Paula. So my oldest daughter has an extremely rare diagnosis after being gaslit from healthcare for 6 years. Her case was picked up by the NIH, who found her to be one in a billion, primarily HLA with. Oh, I guess there's not a question here. See, with every systemic symptom is only seen in males. Not super sure what you're talking about, unless you're talking about something with the white blood cell expression. Might be what it is. And however, even if there's something that's going on, you still need to be able to do the basics, especially. Here's an interesting one. Maybe we address this or not. So, are you against all childhood vax? Well, I can tell you that is that my kids have had zero. Polio is making its way back to the US following the unvaxxed man, and that's also not true. Not true at all. So, guys, here's what's interesting. This will probably get me in trouble, but go ahead and if you actually do your reading and your research, um, if you go and look at it, they changed the diagnosis of polio after the addition of the vaccine. Isn't that interesting? They changed it. Um, in fact, when they were diagnosing polio, they didn't even have any lab work. But once they had the vaccine, they changed the diagnostic criteria. And in fact, if someone had the exact same symptoms of polio, but they had had a vaccine for it, they actually changed it. I believe it was called transverse myelitis, which is just another fancy word for the symptoms of it. So, any recommendations for a natural way to help him? The biggest thing that I would say is if someone is on the autism spectrum, then I would be testing for like a methylation panel. Um, no doubt about it. So you get a methylation panel and then check foods as well, because a methylation panel and also doing for SNP testing, single nucleotide polymorphosis, and that will help you see kind of what he's up against the gun as far as having a hard time with methylation and also breaking down catecholamines and things like that. So what are the risks of EDTA chelation? I think if you're doing EDTA chelation, then whoever is recommending it better know what they are doing. EDTA chelation is really for heavy metals. And so you better make sure that you have done a proper test as far as metals. The only way to test to see if you really truly have heavy metal toxicity is to do like a challenge, a urine challenge, usually with using EDTA, and see if you're excreting it through the kidneys, and then working with someone who knows exactly how to pull it from the body as well. But if you're doing it because of the you know what, then my question is that there's a lot of other things that you can do as far as trying to pull out metals when there may not be metals actually in it. So why do store-bought breads and pastas bloat and hurt my stomach, but my homemade doesn't? That may have to do with the amount of baker's yeast that's in it. And also, if you are doing a sourdough, there won't be any baker's yeast in it or starter yeast in it. And so breads and pastas, Also, there can be some preservatives that are going to be in it if they are from their store bought as well. And you also may have an allergy to it, so it may be the difference as far as what you're using, whether you're using if it's gluten free or if you're using just regular wheat gluten. All right, so let's go to Instagram, guys. We have a couple of minutes left. What can be reasons for chronic low vitamin D? Any recommendations? Eat a lot of fat fish, get a lot of sunlight. Please help. So if you have chronically low vitamin D, then chances are, even if you are eating fatty fish, it probably won't be getting enough vitamin D. The other thing is too is with vitamin D. Um, Absorption from food or from a supplement requires uh, requires bile. So a lot of people who have their gallbladder out are chronically low in vitamin D because they just can't get enough bile when they're taking either a supplement or with food, and so they can't get it. So that has to be with an absorption issue. But there's also what they're testing in the blood also can be a conversion issue with the liver. So if you have some issues with the liver, fatty liver, for example, then you might chronically be low in vitamin D. Okay. So great question. Let's see if I'm caught up. There. Do you have any suggestions on who to follow to learn healthy eating? I'm a typical American, grew up eating processed food. I'm just starting to learn. You can follow me. I'd be honored. Um, Yeah, so here is what I would say be the hierarchy of nutrition. The first thing is make sure it's not inflammatory. Get your foods tested first and foremost. Second thing is, and as far as the health spectrum, is things that aren't going to have an insulin response, a high insulin response. So this would be very high sugar foods. That's something that you have to be very cognizant of because a lot of people do have blood sugar issues. Number three, look at the micronutrient content of your foods. So that's why things like organ meat are always going to be the best. And there is a difference even in the quality of carbohydrates as well. I tell people it's like if you're young, you will not go wrong if you do single ingredient foods. So fish, chicken, beef, always better to be free range, grass fed, um, pastured, and then have vegetables and then have fruit, single ingredient foods and nothing processed. And you'll see a huge difference between the two. My 5-month-old is exclusively breastfed and no, you know what, will be causing her eczema. How can we find the root cause? There could be an issue with mom. So there will be, if you have a food allergy to specific foods and you eat that, you can pass the response on through breast milk. So, and I've seen it happen all the time. So, if a baby is having problems with eczema, then what we'll do is we'll actually do a food test on the mom instead. Oh, look at! I think I've caught up on Instagram. That's really good. Okay. All right, we got time for just a couple more questions. Let me see this. Amy says, my fasting insulin has always been low. The last test, it was actually 2, but my blood sugars continue to rise and I just entered menopause. My A1C went from 5.95 to 6 over the past year, but my insulin is still low. Okay, so if you have high A1C, low insulin, the first thing that I would say is figure out what causes an insulin response, okay? Or what's causing the lack of insulin response. Or the other thing is that you can have a mental stress response that doesn't require an insulin response. So check mental stress cortisol levels. Also check the gastrointestinal system and look at the microbiome profile, and then also look at short chain fatty acid production by getting soluble and insoluble fiber. But the other thing is too is if someone does have low insulin, high blood sugars, and for those reasons that I just went over, also you may be very deficient in potassium because potassium is needed by the pancreas to secrete insulin. And most people that I've seen are very deficient in potassium, not because you can measure it accurately in the blood, because you can't, but because most people don't get the required RDA of potassium, which is about 4,000 milligrams. So go home and do a food journal for 2 to 3 days, and then truly see through the foods that you're eating how much potassium that you're actually getting. Because even if you're low in potassium, you can see elevations of your blood sugar as well. Now, if the insulin is still low there, then you may want to check and see if there's something related to autoimmunity to the beta cells of the pancreas, because you have seen people develop type 1 diabetes, not juvenile, but even as adults as well. All right, so let's see if I can do one more question for you guys. Thank you guys so much. And then make sure, guys, that you like, follow, and share our page. And then stay tuned for 5 Minutes of Fire that's coming up. And then also, too, Inflammation Talk coming up this Thursday on November 9th. Get registered for that if you are from Chicagoland area, and also get registered for the webinar if you're from outside of Chicago in the contiguous 48 states, if you want to work with me one-on-one. So let's see if I can go back and look at this again. I'll have my daughter. I'm due to gallbladder stones. Do you have any recommendations for aftercare? Thank you so much. Okay, so if you're getting your gallbladder removed, sometimes the biggest thing that I would tell you is if you have stones, there's a problem with bile metabolism that happens in the liver. So if you're having a problem with gallbladder stones, I'm going to almost guarantee that you also have a problem with your menstrual cycle too, because it's the liver that makes bile, and the same enzymes that are involved with that, also with metabolization of your estrogens. So you may have some menstrual cycle issues as well. So removing the gallbladder, while if it's super disease, you may have to do that. Sometimes there are ways that you can actually save the gallbladder by helping to dissolve the stones and help to break them down small enough to be able to pass through the common bile duct. I would not recommend you try to do that on your own. If you do, in fact, go and get your gallbladder out, first thing that you should be on a bile acid replacement. So ox bile, for example. If you go to the wellnesswaystore.com, you will see called gallbladder formula, and it's basically ox bile. Because now what happens is you don't have the storage tank for bile, which means you can only just drip it out without storing it and needing a large amount when you have any kind of fatty meal. And that's why you can develop dumping syndrome after you get your gallbladder out, because you eat a high fatty meal, you don't have enough bile, and then you have a bunch of undigested fat, and it goes straight through you. And that's why you can have some problems with urgency of having to have a bowel movement and diarrhea. And then the other thing is if you're not getting larger amounts of bile, it will change your bacterial profile in your intestines. And we see so many times an overgrowth of what's known as Methanobrevibacter smithii. And over time, that can cause some problems with constipation. So at least going on a bile acid after you get it out, if you are going to go through with it, can help you prevent problems down the road. All right, so hopefully that makes sense. Would you recommend both IgE and IgG testing for foods? Yes, at least doing 8 IgEs, and usually I think we do 115. And if someone has a lot of IgEs, we'll expand it even more in order to test more IgEs. And so that's why you can screen for a few, and if you have a lot, you can expand it without having the extra cost of initially doing something that you may not necessarily need. And also, if someone has a lot of IgE food allergies, immediately one of the things they will do is we'll test for a parasite. So people who do have a parasite tend to have a lot of IgE food allergies. And I have seen them actually go away. People say you're going to have them for the rest of your life, but I have in fact seen them go away. Okay. All right. One last question, guys. Does stomach acid deplete as we age, or is this because of health issues? Not necessarily. All right. A lot of people running low in stomach acid because they're so stressed. There are people who do develop, because their stomachs get beat up, they develop antibodies to the cells that make stomach acid. So yeah, is there some level that can happen as we age? Yeah. So like, yes, we age. Like for example, if I'm 46 years of age, I'm not going to be able to run as fast as I did when I was 20. However, the whole concept of aging that people have, so way out of whack. We think that we're just supposed to fall apart. And that's why people say, wait till you're 30 or wait until you're 40 or wait until you're 50. And I'm like, I'm still kind of waiting. What's supposed to happen here? And so you can function at a very high level for a high amount of time. And I think the biggest thing isn't necessarily age, as much as it's the fact that what depletes stomach acid or decreases stomach acid is high amounts of stress. So high amounts of stress will lower stomach acid. If you can get your stressors under control, physical, mental, chemical, you'll see that you'll be able to recover so much better, so much better. So, all right. So Patricia Herzog, awesome, Patricia. So good to see you again. I know I see you on this on the broadcast quite a bit, watching from Montana. Thank you for sharing this information. So it's my pleasure. I know that I've gone a little bit over an hour, it's time for me to eat, just like I had described. One last question from Ileana: can thyroid 1 centimeter cyst nodule be something that should be concerning, and what causes it? So with the thyroid cyst, I want you to think of a cyst. Cyst is anything that the body develops a cyst is because something is irritated. If I get a cyst on my wrist, it's because it's getting irritated and fluid builds up in through that area. Someone's got a cyst, a thyroid nodule cyst, then you should watch it, especially. And so figure out that if there's some kind of irritation, is there something that's happening with the immune system? And so that's why if there's any kind of thyroid inflammation, you want to think of viral infection, and you also want to be possibly low selenium, because that is the primary antioxidant of the thyroid. So people can be deficient in selenium. Okay. All right. Awesome, guys. Well, I appreciate you guys being on this broadcast. We'll be live next week as well. So join us then. Make sure you like, follow our page. Be well, guys. Be blessed. And remember,